Guys, can I just say a massive thank you to each and every one of you amazing legends that absolutely smashed that subscribe button and helped us get to 20,000 subscribers. That's 20,000 of you legends who are part of the Wideawakehorror family. Let's continue this run and see how many more of us we can get together. So, if you're listening and you haven't yet subscribed, please join us and hit the sub button. It's free and will really help support us. Don't forget to hit the like button too if you've subbed. Thank you again.
Alright, so picture this. It's 3 a.m., and I'm sitting here with all the lights on, jumping at every little sound. Why? Because I'm pretty sure I've got a legit stalker, all thanks to trying to sell my old Nintendo DS on Craigslist. Crazy, right? Let me break it down for you. It all started about a month ago. I was doing some spring cleaning, trying to declutter my apartment and maybe make a few bucks on the side. I found my old Nintendo DS buried in a drawer, complete with a couple of games. I figured, why not? Someone out there might want it. So I snapped a few pics and threw up a quick ad on Craigslist. Nothing fancy, just Nintendo DS with games, good condition, $50. I didn't think much of it at the time. I mean, it's just a used gaming console, right? Within an hour, I got a message from someone interested in buying it. They asked the usual stuff. How old is it? Does it work? What games come with it? I answered their questions, and we agreed on $45. Easy peasy, or so I thought. That's when things started to get weird. The buyer kept messaging me like a lot. At first, it was just small talk. Where did I live? What did I do for work? I kept it vague, just being cautious. But then the questions got more personal. Did I live alone? What were my hobbies? What kind of car did I drive? I was getting major creep vibes, but I figured I'd just get the sale over with and be done with it. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my place. I thought, public place, lots of people around, should be safe, right? When I got to the coffee shop, I spotted the buyer right away. They were sitting in the corner, hunched over a laptop, wearing a dark hoodie with a hood up. Red Flag City. I was already there, so I figured I'd just do the exchange quick and bail. I walked over and said hi. The buyer looked up, and I swear their eyes were just wrong. Like empty or something. It freaked me out, but I tried to play it cool. I pulled out the DS and showed it to them, hoping to wrap this up as soon as. But instead of checking out the DS, they started grilling me with more questions. Where exactly did I live? What was my work schedule like? Did I have any roommates or pets? I was getting seriously creeped out at this point. I told them I had to go and started packing up the DS. That's when they grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to make me freeze. It leaned in close and whispered something about how they'd been watching me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I was gonna pass out. I yanked my hand away and bolted out of there, leaving the DS behind. I ran all the way home, constantly looking over my shoulder. When I got to my apartment, I locked the door and triple-checked all the windows. I thought that would be the end of it, but no. Over the next few days, weird stuff started happening. I'd see cars I didn't recognize parked on my street for hours. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear footsteps outside my door. One morning, I found a note stuck to my door with a creepy drawing of a Nintendo DS on it. I was freaking out. I changed my phone number and deleted my Craigslist account. I even crashed at a friend's place for a few days, but the creepy stuff kept happening. I'd get calls from blocked numbers, and sometimes I'd swear I saw that same hooded figure following me around town. After about a week of this, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the police and spilled everything. They took my statement, but honestly, they didn't seem to care much. They said without any direct threats or evidence of a crime, there wasn't much they could do. I was at my wit's end. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and was jumping at every little noise. My best friend suggested I set up some security cameras around my place. I thought it was overkill, but at that point, I was willing to try anything. So I bought a bunch of cameras and spent a whole weekend setting them up. I put them at all the entrances in the hallway, and even one pointed at my car in the parking lot. For the first few days, nothing happened. I was starting to think maybe I had imagined the whole thing. But then, on the fourth night, I got an alert on my phone. One of the cameras had picked up movement outside my apartment door. I opened the app, my hands shaking, and nearly dropped my phone when I saw what was on the screen. There, clear as day, was a hooded figure from the coffee shop. They were just standing there, staring directly at the camera. In their hand was a Nintendo DS, the same one I had tried to sell them. They held it up to the camera. then slowly backed away and disappeared down the hallway. I was in full-on panic mode. I called the police, and this time they actually showed up. They took the camera footage and did a sweep of the building, but of course, the creep was long gone. The cops said they'd increase patrols in the area, but I knew that wouldn't be enough. The next day, I packed up some clothes and my laptop and checked into a hotel across town. I couldn't stay in that apartment anymore, not knowing that psycho knew where I lived. I spent the next week looking for a new place to live, constantly looking over my shoulder and jumping at every little noise. I found a new apartment in a secured building and moved in as quickly as I could. I changed my phone number again and even dyed my hair, just to feel a little less recognizable. I haven't seen the creepy hooded figure again. I'm still on edge all the time. It's been a month now, and I'm sitting here in my new place, still feeling jumpy. Every time I hear a noise in the hallway, I freeze. I've got cameras set up all over this apartment too. I check them obsessively. I can't help but wonder if this is my life now. Always looking over my shoulder, always waiting for that hooded figure to show up again. I keep thinking about that Nintendo DS. Was it really worth all this? I mean, it was just an old gaming console. How did something so simple turn into this nightmare? I've thought about buying a new one just to try and make sense of why someone would go to such extremes over it. But the thought of holding a DS again makes me feel sick to my stomach. So here I am, wide awake at 3 a.m., all because I tried to sell a stupid video game console. I don't know if this creep will ever leave me alone or if I'll ever feel safe again. All I know is I'm never selling anything online ever again. Hell, I might never even play video games again. It's just not worth the risk. Let me back up a bit. I just moved to the city for a new job, and my budget was tighter than skinny jeans on a hipster. I'm talking ramen for dinner every night tight. So when I needed furniture, Craigslist was my go-to. I've been scrolling for hours when I saw this listing for an antique wardrobe. The price was so low, I thought it had to be a typo. I messaged the seller and they got back to me super quick. We set up a time to meet the next day. I borrowed my buddy's truck, promising him beer and pizza as payment, and headed to the address. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the neighborhood was sketchy as hell. Like, don't make eye contact with anyone sketchy. The house was this rundown Victorian that had definitely seen better days. Paint peeling, overgrown yard, the whole 9 yards. I knock on the door, and this old dude answers. He's got this wild Einstein hair and clothes that look like they're from the 70s. He barely says a word, just grunts and motions for me to follow him inside. The interior of the house is even worse than the outside. It smells like mothballs and cat pee, and there's stuff piled everywhere. We weave through narrow pathways between stacks of newspapers and old furniture until we reach this massive wardrobe. It's actually pretty impressive. Dark wood, intricate carvings, the kind of thing you'd expect to find in some fancy estate sale. The old guy helps me load it into the truck, and I'm out of there faster than you can say 10 in a shot. Getting that wardrobe up to my 3rd floor walk-up was a nightmare. I'm pretty sure I pulled every muscle in my body and pissed off all my new neighbors with my cursing. But finally, it's in my apartment, and I'm feeling pretty proud of myself. The next day, I start cleaning it up. It's dusty as hell, and there are cobwebs in every corner. I'm wiping down the inside when I notice something weird about the back panel. It's slightly off-center if it doesn't quite fit right. I push on it, and suddenly it pops open. There's a hidden compartment behind it, maybe 6 inches deep, and inside, a plastic bag filled with white powder. My first thought is, holy crap, I've stumbled into the plot of a bad crime movie. My second thought is, what the hell do I do now? I'm not exactly an expert, but I've seen enough episodes of Breaking Bad to have a pretty good idea of what I'm looking at. I close the compartment and just sit on my bed, trying to process what's happening. Do I call the cops? But what if they think it's mine? Do I try to return the wardrobe? But what if the old guy is some kind of kingpin? Could I just pretend I never found it and hope no one comes looking for it? I spend the next few days in a paranoid haze. Every car that drives by my apartment has me peeking through the blinds. Every knock on the door sends me into a panic. I'm jumping at shadows and barely sleeping. I start imagining all sorts of scenarios. Maybe the old guy was a retired dealer who forgot about his stash. Or maybe he's part of some big ring, and they're going to come looking for their product. I even consider the possibility that I'm being set up somehow, like I'm unknowingly part of some elaborate sting operation. After a week of this, I'm a wreck. I called in sick to work twice because I'm too anxious to leave my apartment. I've watched so many true crime documentaries trying to figure out what to do that I'm pretty sure Netflix is concerned about my viewing habits. Finally, I decided I need to get rid of it. But how? I can't just flush it down the toilet. What if it messes up the plumbing and I have to call a plumber? I can't throw it in the dumpster. What if someone finds it and traces it back to me? I come up with what I think is a brilliant plan. I'll take it to this nearby park and bury it. Yeah, I know, not my smartest moment, but sleep deprivation and paranoia don't exactly lead to great decision-making skills. So, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, I find myself sneaking out of my apartment with a shovel and a bag of what's probably that white stuff. I must look ridiculous, but thankfully the streets are empty. I get to the park and find a secluded spot near some bushes. My hands are shaking so bad I can barely dig. Every little noise has me looking over my shoulder. I'm sure at any moment a cop is going to shine a flashlight in my face and ask what the hell I'm doing. Finally, I get a decent hole dug. I drop the bag in, cover it up, and try to make it look natural. Then I book out of it like my ass is on fire. Back in my apartment, I collapse on the couch, exhausted and still freaking out. I keep expecting someone to kick down my door at any moment, but nothing happens. Days go by, then weeks. Slowly, I start to relax. Maybe it really was just some baking soda or something, and I freaked out over nothing. Or maybe I just got incredibly lucky. I still have the wardrobe. Every now and then I open that hidden compartment, half expecting to find another bag. But it's always empty. Sometimes I wonder if I imagined the whole thing. But then I'll catch a whiff of something that reminds me of that white powder, and my heart starts racing all over again. So yeah, that's my story. No dramatic showdown with dealers, no police raid, no sudden windfall from selling the stuff. Just me, freaking out and probably overreacting to what was most likely some old dude's baking supplies. But let me tell you, I'll never look at Craigslist furniture the same way again. I've got a story that's gonna mess with your head, and I swear every word of it is true. It all started with a freaking Craigslist ad and ended up with me questioning everything I thought I knew about the world. Buckle up, because this is gonna be a wild ride. So, my ancient phone finally gave up the ghost last month. Screen cracked, battery life measured in minutes, the whole 9 yards. I'm not exactly rolling in dough, so I hit up Craigslist to score a decent used phone without breaking the bank. After scrolling through what felt like a million posts of overpriced junk, I stumbled on this listing for an iPhone 11. The price was almost too good to be true, but the ad said it was barely used and the owner was in a hurry to sell. I figured what the hell, might as well check it out. I messaged the seller and we agreed to meet at this little coffee shop downtown. When I got there, I spotted this guy in his 40s, all fidgety and nervous looking. He kept glancing around like he was afraid someone was watching him. Red flag city, right? But I was already there, so I figured I'd at least take a look at the phone. The dude pulled out the iPhone, and I gotta admit, it looked pristine. No scratches, no dents, nothing. I powered it on, checked all the features, and everything seemed legit. The guy was practically bouncing on his toes, clearly in a rush to get out of there. I should have asked more questions, but the price was so good, I just handed over the cash and watched him bolt out of the cafe like his ass was on fire. Back at home, I started setting up the phone. That's when things got weird, like Twilight Zone weird. I was going through the usual steps, wiping the phone, all that jazz, when I noticed there were still some photos in the gallery. No big deal, right? People forget to delete stuff all the time. But then I actually looked at the photos and holy crap. The first one was just this bright light in the night sky. Could have been anything. A plane, a drone, whatever. But as I swiped through, my jaw hit the floor. There was this massive disc-shaped thing hovering over some trees. The details were crystal clear, metallic surface, weird symbols or markings on the side, a faint glow around the edges. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And then the last photo. I almost dropped the phone when I saw it. It was a face, not a human face. This thing had huge black, almond-shaped eyes, grayish skin, and just a hint of a mouth. It was staring right into the camera, and I swear I could feel it looking right through me. I must have sat there for hours, just staring at those photos, zooming in, adjusting the brightness, looking for any sign that they were fakes. But the more I looked, the more real they seemed. The lighting, the shadows, the reflections, everything matched up perfectly. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I had seen. Was this some elaborate prank, special effects for a movie? Or had I accidentally stumbled onto proof of freaking aliens? The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. At work, I'd catch myself zoning out, replaying those images in my head. I started researching UFO sightings in the area, looking for anything that matched what I'd seen in the photos. I even found myself on some pretty out there conspiracy theory forums, which is so not my usual scene. I thought about contacting the seller, but the Craigslist ad had vanished, and the number he'd used was disconnected. It was like the guy had disappeared into thin air, which only added to the weirdness of the whole situation. About a week after I got the phone, things got even stranger. I was walking home from work, and I swear I saw something in the sky. It was just for a second, but it looked exactly like the object in the photos. A metallic disc, moving way too fast to be any normal aircraft. I stood there on the sidewalk, gawking at the sky like an idiot, but it was gone. After that, I started seeing things everywhere. Weird lights in the sky at night, strange shadows out of the corner of my eye. I installed a home security system and started keeping my curtains closed 24/7. Paranoid, maybe. But those photos had me spooked. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Sometimes I'd be sitting at home, and the hairs on the back of my neck would stand out for no reason. I'd spin around, half expecting to see one of those gray aliens standing in my living room. My friends started noticing that something was up. I was canceling plans left and right, barely leaving my apartment except for work. How could I explain what was going on? They'd think I'd lost my mind. Hell, some days I thought I was losing it. About 2 weeks in, I had this crazy vivid dream. I was in my bedroom and suddenly, this bright light was shining through the window. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. And then these tall, skinny figures with huge eyes were standing over me. I woke up in a cold sweat, tangled in my sheets, my heart racing like I'd run a marathon. After that, I started having trouble sleeping. Every little noise had me jumping out of bed, checking the locks, peering out the windows. I was a mess, running on caffeine and nervous energy. I thought about going to the police, but what would I even say? Hey, I bought this phone on Craigslist, and it has pictures of aliens on it. They'd laugh me out of the station. Plus, a part of me was afraid of what might happen if I told anyone. What if the government found out? What if the aliens knew I had seen them? As the weeks went by, the fear and paranoia just kept building. I couldn't concentrate at work, couldn't enjoy time with friends, on the rare occasions I actually saw them. Those photos were always there in the back of my mind, along with all the questions they raised. Were we really alone in the universe? Had aliens been visiting Earth? Was there some big government cover-up? And why the hell did this random guy on Craigslist have these photos? I've spent countless hours staring at those pictures, trying to find some clue, some explanation that would make sense of all this. The more I look, the more convinced I am that they're real, and that scares the crap out of me. I've got this phone with potentially world-changing evidence on it, and I have no idea what to do with it. Every day, I go back and forth between wanting to show the world and wanting to chuck the phone in the ocean and forget this ever happened. All I know is that my life has been turned upside down by a simple Craigslist purchase. I can't unsee what I've seen, can't unlearn what I've learned. And now, every time I look up at the night sky, I can't help but wonder who's looking back. Alright, so picture this. It's a scorching summer day, and I'm scrolling through my phone, bored out of my mind. That's when I get this brilliant idea to sell my old mountain bike on Craigslist. Little did I know this decision was gonna turn my lazy Sunday into a full-blown action movie. So I snap a few pics of the bike, nothing fancy, just your basic, here's what it looks like shots. I write up a quick description, something like used mountain bike, still rides great, $200. Hit post and forget about it for a while. A couple days go by, and I'm getting these lowball offers left and right. People trying to trade me for broken Xbox controllers and stuff. I'm about ready to give up when I get this message from a guy named Mike. He seems super interested, asking all these specific questions about the bike's specs and condition. I'm thinking, finally, someone who knows their stuff. We go back and forth for a bit, and Mike says he wants to come check out the bike quickly. I'm all for it, so we set up a time for the next day. He insists on coming to my place, which I'm not totally comfortable with, but I figure it's broad daylight. What could go wrong? The next day rolls around, and I'm cleaning up the bike a bit, making sure it's presentable. Right on time, I hear a truck pull up outside. I peek out the window and see this dude who looks nothing like the profile pic Mike was using. Red flag number one, right? but I brush it off and head outside. This guy, who I'm assuming is Mike, hops out of his truck. He's all twitchy and nervous looking, constantly glancing around. I'm starting to get a bad feeling, but I'm already committed at this point. We do the usual small talk, and he starts looking over the bike. He's asking all these technical questions that I can barely answer. I'm just nodding along, trying to sound like I know what I'm talking about. After a few minutes, he asks if he can take it for a quick spin around the block. Now I'm got screaming at me to say no, but I don't want to seem like a jerk. So I come up with this idea to hold onto his truck keys while he test rides the bike. He hesitates for a second, which sets off more alarm bells in my head, but then he hands them over. I watch as he pedals off down the street, feeling pretty clever about my key idea. A couple minutes pass, and I'm starting to relax a little. Maybe I was just being paranoid, But then I hear it, the sound of tires screeching in the distance. Before I can even process what's happening, I see the guy flying down the street on my bike, pedaling like his life depends on it. He blows right past me and heads straight for his truck. In that split second, my brain finally catches up to what's going on. This dude is trying to steal my bike. Without even thinking, I start sprinting towards his truck. I've got no plan, just pure adrenaline driving me forward. I see him toss the bike into the back of his pickup and jump into the driver's seat. By some miracle, I manage to reach the truck just as he's trying to start it up. Of course, I've still got his keys in my hand, which he seems to have forgotten in his rush. Now, here's where things get really wild. I yank open the passenger door and practically dive into the cab. We're both yelling and cussing at each other, creating this insane chaos inside the truck. The guy starts frantically searching for something, and I realize he's looking for a way to hotwire the truck. He finds a screwdriver in the glove box and tries to jam it into the ignition. At this point, I'm running on pure instinct. I grab his arm to stop him, and suddenly we're in this intense wrestling match over the screwdriver. It's like some bizarre tug of war, but with way higher stakes. Somehow, in the middle of all this, I manage to get the screwdriver away from him, but this guy is not giving up easily. He starts throwing punches, and I'm doing my best to block them while also trying to figure out how to get out of this situation. I finally manage to scramble out of the truck, but he's right on my heels. We end up in this weird standoff in my driveway, both of us panting and glaring at each other. I've got his keys and the screwdriver, and he's got my bike in the back of his truck. By this time, the commotion's attracted some attention. I can see my nosy neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, peeking out her window. And then I hear it, sirens in the distance, getting closer by the second. The would-be bike thief must have heard them too because his whole demeanor changes. He looks around frantically like a cornered animal. Then, without warning, he makes a mad dash for his truck. I think he's going to try and start it again, but instead, he yanks the bike out of the bed. Before I can even react, he's jumped on it and is pedaling away as fast as he can. I'm left standing there, holding his keys and screwdriver, watching him disappear down the street. The whole thing probably only lasted a few minutes, but it felt like hours. The cops show up shortly after, and I have to explain this whole crazy situation to them. They take my statement and the guy's keys as evidence, but I can tell from their faces that they don't have high hopes of catching him. For the next few days, I'm constantly on edge. Every time I hear a car outside, I'm peering out the window, half expecting to see that beat-up truck. I keep replaying the whole scene in my head, wondering if I could have done anything differently. The weirdest part. A couple days later, I get another message on Craigslist about the bike. It's from the same account as before, just saying, still available, like nothing had ever happened. I don't even know how to respond to that. In the end, I decide to keep the bike. After all that drama, it just doesn't feel right to sell it anymore. Plus, I figure I've kind of earned it back at this point, So now, every time I look at that bike, I'm reminded of my insane Craigslist adventure. It's become this weird symbol of the day I fought off a bike thief in my own driveway. I've even started riding it again, partly out of spite and partly because, well, it is actually a pretty decent bike. I've got a wild ride to share about the time I tried to make a quick buck on Craigslist and ended up in a mess that'd make even Harry Potter's head spin. It all started on a boring Tuesday night. I was scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the pile of bills on my coffee table, when I had this brilliant, or so I thought, idea to sell some of my old stuff online. I remembered the box of Harry Potter wands collecting dust in my closet, the ones you get at theme parks and conventions. I figured, why not? Someone out there's got to want them. So I snapped a few pics, wrote up a quick description, and boom, My Craigslist ad was live. Magical collection of Harry Potter wands, $100 OVO. I tossed my phone aside and forgot about it, thinking it'd probably sit there for weeks. Boy, was I wrong. Not even an hour later, my phone starts blowing up with notifications. This guy, let's call him Wizard Dude 789, is messaging me like crazy. He's all, OMG, I need these wands. And please tell me they're still available. I'm thinking, jackpot, right? We start chatting, and this dude seems legit excited. He's dropping Harry Potter references left and right, talking about his favorite spells, how we've been looking for a set like this forever. I'm getting caught up in his enthusiasm, thinking I'm about to make some mega fans day. We agree to meet up that weekend at this little coffee shop downtown. I figure it's safe enough public place, lots of people around, broad daylight. What could go wrong? Saturday rolls around, and I'm sitting there nursing an overpriced lot, the box of wands on the table next to me. I'm people watching, trying to guess which one might be my buyer. That's when this guy walks in, and let me tell you, he was not what I expected. He's tall, kind of lanky, with this messy brown hair that looks like he just rolled out of bed. He's wearing this massive hoodie, which is weird because it's hot as balls outside, and these thick rimmed glasses that keep sliding down his nose. He spots me, or rather the box, and his whole face lights up. As he gets closer, I notice he's got this faint smell of, is that patchouli? He plops down across from me, immediately launching into this rapid-fire convo about the wands. Which ones are in the set? Are they all from different characters? Did I know that in the books, wands choose the wizard? I'm nodding along trying to keep up, while also thinking this guy's either the world's biggest Potter nerd or he's had way too much coffee. He's practically vibrating with excitement as he opens the box, handling each wand like it's made of glass. After what feels like an hour of him geeking out, but was probably only like 10 minutes, he finally remembers why we're here. He reaches into his hoodie pocket and pulls out this wad of cash. Now, I'm not exactly a money expert, but something about those bills just felt off. They were crisp, almost too crisp, But I figured, hey, maybe he just hit up an ATM. He counts out 5 20s, slides them across the table, and cradles the box of wands like it's his firstborn. We chat for a few more minutes. He's telling me about how he's gonna surprise his little cousin with these, how it's gonna blow her mind. I'm feeling pretty good about the whole thing, thinking I've made some kid's day and scored some cash in the process. We say our goodbyes, and I watch him practically skip out of the coffee shop, that box hugged tight to his chest. I'm sitting there, feeling like a regular philanthropist, sipping my now cold latte and thinking about what I'm gonna do with my $100. Fast forward to Monday. I've got the day off, so I figure I'll swing by the bank, deposit that cash, maybe treat myself to lunch or something. I'm standing in line, scrolling through my phone, not really paying attention. When it's my turn, I hand over the bills to the teller, already thinking about where I'm gonna grab food. That's when I notice the teller's face. She's got this weird look, kinda squinting at the bills. She holds them up to the light, then another. My stomach does this little flip. Something's not right. She calls over her manager, and they start whispering and pointing at the money. By now, my heart's pounding so hard I swear everyone in the bank can hear it. The manager turns to me, and I know what's coming before she even opens her mouth. Sir, I'm sorry, but these bills are counterfeit. It's like the floor drops out from under me. Counterfeit? As in fake? As in I just got scammed by some Harry Potter fanboy with a printing press. The next hour is a blur. The manager's calling the police. I'm trying to explain the whole Craigslist thing. Other customers are giving me these looks like I'm some kind of master criminal, which is hilarious because I can barely figure out how to use the self-checkout at the grocery store, let alone pull off some elaborate money scam. The cops show up, and I have to go through the whole story again. The Craigslist ad, the meetup, the weird guy in the hoodie. They're asking all these questions. Did I get his name? Nope, just his Craigslist username, his license plate. Who even thinks of that? A clear description. Brown hair and glasses. So like half the city. I'm sitting there in this tiny office at the bank, feeling like the world's biggest idiot, while the cops take down all the details. They're being nice about it, telling me this kind of thing happens more often than you'd think. But that doesn't make me feel any better about the fact that I'm now at a box of wands and $100. They give me this case number, tell me to look into it, but I can tell from their faces that this isn't exactly going to the top of their priority list. I mean, it's not like I got robbed at gunpoint or anything. Just good old-fashioned stupid. As I'm leaving the bank, my mind's racing. Was any of that guy's story true? Did he really have a cousin he was surprising, or was that all part of the act? And where the hell does someone even get fake money that good? I spend the next few days jumping every time my phone buzzes, half expecting it to be the cops telling me they caught the guy. But of course, that doesn't happen. Life goes on, and I'm left with nothing but a stupid story and a lesson learned the hard way. So that's it. My big Craigslist adventure. No magic, no happy ending, just me feeling like an idiot and probably on some watch list at the bank now. Oh, I'm pretty sure I'm a Harry Potter for life. Thanks a lot, Wizard Dude 789. Last month, I got myself into some seriously messed up stuff that I never saw coming. It all started when I decided to finally pull the trigger on buying a used truck. Little did I know, this seemingly innocent purchase was gonna turn my life upside down and have me tangled up with the cops. Buckle up, because this story's a wild ride. I've been eyeing Ford F-150s for years, drooling over them whenever I'd see one cruising down the street. After busting my ass at work and pinching pennies for what felt like forever, I finally had enough saved up to start hunting for one of my own. I hit up Craigslist and spent weeks scrolling through listings, most of which were either total pieces of junk or way out of my price range. Then one random Tuesday night, I stumbled across this listing that seemed almost too perfect. It was for a 2015 F-150, barely any miles on it, and the price was so low I thought it had to be a typo. The photo showed this gleaming red truck that looked like it had just rolled off the showroom floor. I figured it was probably some kind of scam, but I couldn't help myself. I fired off a message to the seller anyway. To my shock, I got a response within like 20 minutes from this dude named Mike. He fed me some story about how he was relocating for work and needed to offload the truck fast. Said he'd already bought a new ride at his new place and just wanted this one gone. I was still pretty damn skeptical, but I gotta admit the story didn't sound completely out there. We set up a time to meet the next day so I could check out the truck in person. I pulled up to this Walmart parking lot, half expecting the guy to be a no-show or for the truck to be a total wreck. But nah, there it was in all its glory, looking even better than the pics if you can believe it. This Mike guy seemed decent enough, early 30s, clean cut, friendly but not overly chatty. He tossed me the keys and told me to take it for a spin. I'm not gonna lie, as soon as I got behind the wheel, I was in love. The engine purred like a damn kitten. The steering was tight, and the interior still had that new car smell. I couldn't find a single thing wrong with it, which should have been my first clue that something was off. When we got back to the parking lot, I pressed Mike again on why he was selling it so cheap. He spun this whole tale about needing quick cash for moving expenses and not having time to deal with selling it at full price. Against every rational thought in my brain, I decided to go for it. We headed to my bank, I pulled out a fat stack of cash, and just like that, I was a proud owner of my dream truck. For the first few days, I was riding high. I cruised all over town, revving the engine at stoplights and basking in the jealous stares from other drivers. But then I started noticing some weird stuff. There was this faint smell I couldn't quite place, kinda metallic and chemical, like a mix of bleach and pennies. And sometimes when I'd start it up, there'd be this odd rattling sound for a few seconds before it smoothed out. I tried to brush it off, figuring maybe it just needed a tune-up or something. But these little quirks kept nagging at me, like a splinter in my brain I couldn't shake loose. Then about a week after I bought the truck, things went from weird to downright terrifying. I was chilling on my couch, mindlessly scrolling through Netflix, when I heard this loud, authoritative knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I cautiously peeked out the window. My heart damn near stopped when I saw 2 police cruisers in my driveway, lights flashing like a goddamn disco. I opened the door to find 3 cops standing there, looking all grim and serious. They asked if I was the owner of the Ford F-150 parked outside, and when I said yeah, they exchanged these heavy looks that made my stomach do backflips. They said they needed to ask me some questions about the truck and where I got it. What followed was the most intense and scary hour of my life. They grilled me about every tiny detail of the purchase. Where exactly did I meet the seller? What did he look like? Did he say anything suspicious? I racked my brain trying to remember everything I could about Mike and our interactions, but the whole time, I could tell they weren't buying it. They kept giving each other these skeptical side eyes like they thought I was full of rubbish. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, one of the cops dropped a bombshell. He said the truck had been involved in a serious crime, and they had reason to believe the previous owner was mixed up with a local pill trafficking ring. Apparently, they'd been tracking this vehicle for months as part of some big ongoing investigation. I felt like I was gonna hurl right there on my front porch. It all started clicking into place. The stupid low price, Mike's eagerness to get rid of it, the weird smells and sounds. I've unknowingly bought a vehicle that was hot as hell, probably used to transport you know what or worse. The cops said they had to impound the truck as evidence and warned me that I might be called in for more questioning as their investigation continued. Before they left, they gave me this stern lecture about being more careful when buying stuff from strangers, as if I needed to be told that after this nightmare. After they hauled my truck away, I just stood there in shock, trying to wrap my head around what the hell had just happened. My mind was racing a million miles an hour, replaying every moment with Mike, searching for clues I might have missed. Had he seemed nervous? Was there anything off about his behavior that I'd overlooked? I tried reaching out to Mike using the contact info he'd given me, but of course it was all bogus. The phone number was disconnected, and the email address bounced back. It was like the dude had vanished into thin air. I scoured every social media platform I could think of, trying to find any trace of him, but came up empty-handed. To make matters worse, I was out $5,000 with absolutely nothing to show for it. I drained my savings to buy that truck, and now it was gone, probably sitting in some police impound lot as evidence in a case. I felt like the biggest idiot on the planet for falling for such an obvious scam. My friends and family tried to console me, saying it could have happened to anyone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I should have known better. As the weeks dragged on, my anxiety slowly started to ease up a bit. The cops never came back around, and I'd never heard anything else about the investigation. I still had no clue what exactly that truck was used for or who Mike really was. Part of me is curious as hell, but another part is scared to death to find out the truth. I'd never thought a simple Craigslist post would lead to such a terrifying experience. It all started when my beloved golden retriever, Max, went missing last Tuesday. I was devastated and desperate to find him, so I decided to post an ad on Craigslist with his photo and description. A day later, I received an email from someone claiming to have found Max. The sender, who went by the name Alex, said he had spotted a dog matching Max's description in a nearby park. My heart leaped with joy, and I quickly arranged to meet Alex that evening to reunite with my furry friend. As I drove to the meeting spot, a small voice in the back of my mind warned me to be cautious. I brushed it off, thinking I was just being paranoid. When I arrived at the park, it was already getting dark. I scanned the area, looking for anyone who might be Alex. That's when I noticed a man standing alone near the playground. He was tall and lanky, wearing a dark hoodie that obscured most of his face. Something about his posture made me uneasy, but I reminded myself that I was there for Max. I approached the man and asked if he was Alex. He nodded slowly, his eyes never quite meeting mine. I looked around, expecting to see Max, but there was no sign of him. When I asked where the dog was, Alex mumbled something about leaving it at home for safety. Alarm bells started ringing in my head. Why would he bring Max home instead of returning him to me right away? I took a step back, ready to make an excuse and leave, but Alex suddenly became more animated. He insisted that we go to his place to get Max, saying it wasn't far. My instincts were screaming at me to get out of there. I politely declined and said I had to go, turning to walk back to my car. As I walked away, I could hear footsteps behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and saw Alex following me, maintaining the same distance. My heart began to race. I picked up my pace, and so did he. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking as I tried to unlock my car door. Just as I had the door open, I heard Alex's footsteps quicken behind me. I jumped into my car and locked the doors, my breath coming in short gasps. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Alex standing a few feet away, his face still hidden by the hoodie. He stood there, unmoving, as I started the engine and drove away as fast as I could. Once I was home, I collapsed on the couch, still shaking from the encounter. That's when I decided to do some research on Alex. I Googled his email address and found several posts on local forums warning about a man using lost pet ads to lure people into dangerous situations. My blood ran cold as I read account after account of people who had narrowly escaped similar encounters. Some hadn't been as lucky as me. I realized how close I had come to becoming another victim. The next day, I reported the incident to the police. They took my statement but warned me that without more evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They advised me to be more careful in the future and to always meet in public places for any online transactions. I spent the next few days jumping at every sound and double-checking my locks. I couldn't shake the feeling that Alex might try to find me again. I removed my Craigslist post and warned my friends and neighbors about the potential danger. A week later, I was walking home from the grocery store when I noticed a familiar figure across the street. My heart nearly stopped when I recognized the tall, lanky frame and dark hoodie. It was Alex, and he was watching me. I quickened my pace, clutching my phone and ready to call for help. But when I looked back, he was gone. Had I imagined it? Was my fear making me see things that weren't there? From that day on, I became hyper-vigilant. I changed my routines, varied my routes to work, and always made sure someone knew where I was. The experience had shaken me to my core, making me realize how vulnerable we can be, even in seemingly innocent situations. As for Max, he eventually returned home on his own, a little dirty but otherwise unharmed. I was overjoyed to have him back, but the relief was tainted by the lingering fear from my encounter with Alex. This experience taught me a harsh lesson about trust and safety in the digital age. What started as a simple attempt to find my lost dog turned into a nightmarish ordeal that could have ended much worse. Now, whenever I see a lost pet poster or an online ad, I can't help but think of Alex and wonder if there's someone out there using people's love for their pets as a way to prey on them. It's a sobering thought that makes me appreciate the importance of trusting my instincts and being cautious, even in the most seemingly innocent situations. I still use Craigslist and other online platforms, but with a much more critical eye. I always meet in public places, bring a friend when possible, and trust my gut when something feels off. It's a small price to pay for peace of mind and safety. As for Alex, I never saw him again after that day on the street, but the memory of our encounter serves as a constant reminder that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places. It's a lesson I'll never forget, and one I hope others can learn from without having to experience it firsthand. I've been feeling stressed lately, work piling up and the city noise grating on my nerves. A weekend getaway seemed like just the thing I needed to recharge. Scrolling through Craigslist one evening, I stumbled upon an ad that caught my eye, a house swap opportunity in a quiet wooded area just a couple hours from the city. The pictures showed a charming cabin nestled among tall pines, a wraparound porch with a porch swing, and a cozy interior with a stone fireplace. It looked perfect. I reached out to the owner, and we quickly worked out the details over email. He seemed friendly enough, and we agreed to swap houses for the weekend. I was excited for a change of scenery and some peace and quiet. Friday finally rolled around, and I set off after work, following the directions the owner had sent. As I drove further from the city, the roads became narrower and more winding. The trees grew denser, blocking out most of the fading daylight. Just when I thought I must have taken a wrong turn, I spotted the cabin through the trees. Pulling into the gravel driveway, I felt a slight unease. The cabin and surrounding area looked almost too perfect, like a movie set rather than a lived-in home. The lawn was immaculately manicured without so much as a fallen leaf. The cabin's exterior was spotless, the windows gleaming in the last rays of sunlight. I shook off the feeling, chalking it up to city dweller paranoia, and grabbed my bags from the car. The key was under the mat, just as the owner had said. I let myself in and flicked on the lights. The interior was just as pristine as the outside. Every surface sparkled, not a speck of dust in sight. It was impressive, but something about it felt off. As I explored the cabin, I noticed odd personal touches that seemed out of place in a rental property. A half-empty glass of water sat on the bedside table, condensation still beating on its surface. In the bathroom, a damp towel hung over the shower rod. A pair of well-worn slippers waited by the bed, as if their owner had just stepped out of them. These items gave me an unsettling feeling, like I was intruding on someone's private space rather than staying in a prepared rental. I tried to shake off the weird vibes and settled in for the night. I unpacked my bag, made a simple dinner in the gleaming kitchen, and curled up on the couch with a book. As night fell, the woods outside grew pitch black. The silence was overwhelming after months in the noisy city. I found myself straining to hear something, anything beyond the occasional creak of the cabin settling. Just as I was considering turning in for the night, my phone pinged with a notification. It was a message from the owner, hoping I was enjoying my stay. I thought it odd that he'd check in. We hadn't planned to keep in touch during the swap. Before I could respond, another message came through. And another. And another. The messages started innocuously enough. comments about how comfy the armchair was, how nice the view was from the kitchen window. But as they kept coming, I realized with growing horror that the owner seemed to know exactly where I was in the house at any given moment. My heart racing, I double-checked all the locks and drew the curtains tight. But the messages kept coming, now remarking on my actions. My phone pinged constantly, the sound becoming more ominous with each passing second. Panic rising in my throat, I grabbed my keys and ran for the door, but it wouldn't budge. I tried the windows, but they were all sealed shut. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was trapped. The messages took on a more sinister tone. The owner revealed that this had all been part of his plan. The house swap was just a ruse to lure me here. He'd been watching me through hidden cameras the entire time. Not just since I arrived, but for weeks before, tracking my movements and learning my routines. I searched frantically for a way out, checking every door and window, looking for any weak points. But the cabin was like a fortress. In my panic, I hadn't noticed that there was no cell signal. My phone, still pinging with incoming messages, was useless for calling for help. As the night wore on, I huddled in a corner, wide awake and terrified. The messages grew increasingly disturbing, describing things I'd done earlier in the day, private moments I thought I'd had alone. It was clear the owner had been watching me for far longer than just this weekend. I tried to stay calm and think logically about how to escape, but fear clouded my mind. Every creak of the house made me jump. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of my vision. I felt like a mouse in a trap, with a cat watching and waiting to pounce. Just before dawn, I thought I couldn't take the psychological torture any longer. I heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside. Footsteps on the porch. The sound of a key turning in a lock. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. As the door slowly opened, I screwed my eyes shut, too terrified to look. I jolted awake with a gasp, drenched in sweat and tangled in my sheets. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom windows, my own bedroom windows in my apartment in the city. The familiar sounds of traffic and neighbors going about their day filtered in from outside. It had all been a nightmare. Relief washed over me as I realized I was safe in my own bed. I'd never even left the city. I reached for my phone to check the time, my hands still shaking slightly from the lingering fear of the dream. As I unlocked my screen, my blood ran cold. There was a new message from an unknown number. With trembling fingers, I opened it, my mind racing with the possibilities. The message was short, just a few words, but they sent a chill down my spine. Hope you enjoyed your stay. See you again soon. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. It couldn't be real. It had to be a coincidence or a prank or something. But as I sat there, my phone clutched in my sweaty hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That maybe, just maybe, my nightmare wasn't over. The rest of the day passed in a haze of paranoia. I jumped at every noise, checked over my shoulder constantly, and triple-locked my door that night. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that it was all in my head, but a part of me remained on high alert, waiting for the other shoe to drop. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I made a vow to myself. No more Craigslist. No more house swaps with strangers, and definitely no more weekends in isolated cabins. Some getaways, I realized, come with a price too high to pay.
Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.